G'day legends, I hope that you're well. What I want to bring today is really, we'll go over the map first, but then I want to talk about these tanks to Ukraine because I think there's some stuff being left out, some very important things being left out, specifically of the Abrams tanks, and some things in this that are a little bit concerning if I was, really in the mix of this. But let's go over the map. So today is the 27th of January, and we're back here on the 23rd. So I got a message this morning from a good friend of mine, someone who's fairly large on social media, foreign fighter, posts a lot of stuff, and he is, an American fighting in Ukraine. And all he messaged me this morning were Russians are pushing hard today. Let's see how this plays out. And I know for a fact he is in this region, the Bakhmut sort of area. So we're back on the 23rd. I think this was about the last time I did last video. 24th, 25th, you can see the Russians making more advance near Krasnohora. And then 26th, sorry, my battery saver's on, my laptop's going dead. And then 27th, where we are today, you can see the Russians further sort of spiking out. And this spike really starting to cut off this road as they're getting closer and closer and closer. And that road, according to what I'm hearing, is completely under Russian fire control for the last couple of days from their artillery, from everything. They're within kilometres of this. That's under fire of just heavy machine guns as well as, artillery. And this encirclement of Bakhmut looks somewhat inevitable at the moment. Maybe not. Maybe there will be an offensive against this, but is it looking inevitable? Currently, it sort of is. I've seen in the last couple of weeks, Russians making more and more ground on this region. There hasn't really been much shift of the front line in any other areas. There's been some small offensives both ways, but nothing really to write home about anywhere else. So let's jump onto these tanks. And, Biden in the last 24, 48 hours has said, well, more 36 hours, has said that they will send 31 Abrams tanks to Ukraine. And this was celebrated internationally. And the biggest thing in this, though, I think, well, there's a few things, is, well, one, these are an incredibly complex vehicle. They use a turbine engine. That engine is different to everything else. These engines, I've got a small amount of experience with these because I was mechanised infantry for a while in the army. My battalion went mechanised infantry, light infantry here and there. So I've worked with Abrams a fair bit, and they are a fucking beast of a vehicle. They can run on multiple different types of fuel. They're like a doomsday machine. They are a great tank, but they are incredibly complex. They use a turbine engine. They use literally a jet-style engine. That's not as simple as your normal diesel engine that mechanics and stuff might be used to. So it is going to take a long time training them, training the people, training the mechanics, training logistics, all of this big, heavy tank. The problem is they're saying that these tanks won't be delivered for many months or in a year or more to deliver these vehicles. So we're 6 months, a year, some people are saying over a year. That's the length until they get there. So these vehicles are not going to be there for what people are really saying is going to be Russia's spring offensive. The M1 is not going to be there. Now, I had a few questions of my own that I've been going into because I found it funny that the experts are saying that these are not going to be from US stockpile. And I was like, what? Well, and this is the fact, I looked it up, that Russia hasn't actually made these tanks since 1992. Now, but they keep getting upgraded. Yeah, well, yes, that's how military equipment tends to work. The hull of the vehicle, whatever, is made then, and then they upgrade and upgrade and upgrade. So, yes, there are major differences from then until now. But, the variants change a lot. But the question is, well, these haven't been made since 92. Are they re-picking up the factories? Are they doing this? And then what I found was, and I've talked about this, if you've watched me talk about this and on the Speak the Truth podcast, I've spoken about the secret composite armour within Abrams and how the Australian Army, and Australia is either the first or second most trusted country of the US. I think we're the most trusted Republican, from the Republicans, the most trusted, and Democrats second, something like that. It doesn't matter, either way. And Australians don't have the full ability to work on the composite top secret armour in the Abrams. As far as my understanding was, if there is a damage to that armour, things like that, there needs to be crews flown out to the States or the vehicle go back, something crazy like that, because even Australia, the most trusted, don't have the full access to fix, maintain, do whatever to this armour. And my question was, well, is Ukraine getting that armour? Because either way, these tanks are great, but there will be a few of these tanks killed. It's inevitable. Or maybe captured by the Russians, what's going to happen there. And my thing was, maybe they're building it to take out the classified material. And doing some digging, well, I've found that Ukraine is getting the M1A2 variant, which is the newest variant. That's what the news is saying. Ukraine's getting the most new variant of the Abrams. True, but they're not getting this top secret armor. So they're getting the new variant, and an M1A2 variant. The really difference is, and I'm going to read this off, the M1A2 is further development of the M1A1 with commander's independent thermal viewer, weapon station, position navigation equipment, and a full set of controls displays linked by digital data bus. These upgrades provided the M1A2 with improvised fire control system. Great, big upgrade. Fire control systems, they're the systems within the tank. They're the upgrades. When I say 1992, I mean the hull of the vehicle. But US federal policy forbids the export of Abrams with classified armour packages used by the United States military, which includes depleted uranium. A person with the knowledge of the policy told Politico, the US strips the vehicles of this secret armour recipe, this is the composite armour, before selling them to countries. Now, I know that we have that in Australia, but it's a very different case. And that is a big thing. Now, a lot of the vehicles we've seen of how the Abrams work, well, the success has been with that armor. And this is what I found it funny, because originally when I heard 31 tanks, I'm thinking the US made approximately 5,000 of these. They'd have them just sitting in a storage facility somewhere. Why are they remaking them? And that's the reason they're remaking them. And that's the reason it's going to take a bloody long time. You're making something that hasn't been produced for a long time. 92, even if it's a few years either way, those guys who worked on there, they're retired. The plans are probably bloody somewhere. So that's difficult. And it not arriving between these spring offensives is hard, especially with logistics, the training, and getting some of that time. And they also say, moving on to the German Leopard 2, Germany is supplying 14 Leopard 2s, a lot less than America's 31 Abrams, but they reckon they'll be 3 months. So that 3 months, well, that's a long time in this war. It could miss an offensive by the Russians. And if I was the Russians, I'd be thinking, we need to do this offensive before this stuff starts to arrive. But I've been doing a bit more digging of the countries that actually use the Leopard 2s. Austria, Canada, Chile, Denmark, Finland, Germany, Greece, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Singapore, Switzerland, Sweden, Spain, and Turkey. So a lot of bloody countries use the Leopard 2. And what I would be doing if I was in some realm of this is I'd be providing those countries and say, look, we'll give you Abrams tanks or replacement or this or that or rent a loan, I don't know, and send Leopard 2s. Because at the end of the day, you're working on completely different systems. Logistics win wars. An infantryman doesn't want to say that, because we're on a fucking pogue. Logistics win wars. This is the reason Russia in the first days of this war had, 20-mile, 30-mile convoys stuck and bloody ripped to shreds because their logistics failed. And having multiple different variants of tanks, and not only a variant, you've got Abrams, Leopard, completely different engines. That's like if you're a mechanic and you had a normal 6-cylinder engine and a rotary engine. You're better off if you're logistics having one engine, same parts, same everything. It is hard. So will we see something like that? I don't know. I know the US, this headlines well because Abrams tanks, most successful, powerful tank in the world, blah, blah, blah. Great. What is actually the best fit? And something else I'd like to bring up in this is realistically, if the war ends tomorrow and, there needs to be a procurement of tanks, main battle tanks for Ukraine, what most likely are the tanks going to go? Most likely are going to be Leopard 2s that are developed in Europe. They're very successful. That's most likely what's going to be implemented there. So you can train crews already, and then that will go on during the war, through the war, whatever. France still on the fence with the French Leclerc tank, and I read some funny comments of like, well, I wouldn't wish Leclerc tanks on my enemy, any French vehicle. So look, I can't speak for Leclerc tanks. I'm sure they're fantastic, but French vehicles have quite a reputation. Russia has said that this is an absolute blatant escalation of force, especially with the depleted uranium sabot rounds that the Abrams will use. Now, a sabot round, if you're not familiar, and if you're a tanker, I know I'll get this wrong, but is basically like a big dart. It sits within like a casing, like your 120mm casing in your cannon. The dart sits within that casing, and it basically just fires a super hard, super heavy uranium dart or depleted uranium dart at another tank to punch through it. And that's basically how it works. They use these extensively in Iraq. where it's funny about this is, well, Russia's Sabo round is depleted uranium as well, and they've been firing those around. So you don't see it all there. But, Russia are saying this is a blatant escalation, and that these Sabo rounds, if the depleted uranium type, will be seen as a nuclear attack. And as well, it's flexing muscles. They're using that N word again. Russia love throwing that around. And will we see an escalation? Well, what's the escalation from here for Russia? You think the escalation would have happened when the invasion was not going very well. That's when you would have escalated, but we haven't seen it. But another thing that I guess is a little bit concerning about this is where is going to be the support for these tanks. Tanks are great. A lot of people have been pointing out that main battle tanks are null and void in modern war, which, if you listen to some people who really know stuff about tanks, say is not true. The lack of success that we've seen in tanks in this war hasn't been the tank itself. Even with Soviet tanks, these T-72s, T-90s, they can be used very, very lethally. The problem has been lack of air support, lack of air superiority. This is why early in the war we saw Russian tanks moving right into cities, because they got told, allegedly, we're told they had air superiority. So tanks with air superiority, brilliant. Roll through, go for your life. Didn't have it. And Ukraine had many, many, many anti-tank munitions, JAVs, NLAWs, different types, all this, and got wiped out. So what is concerning is, what is the West doing to support these vehicles going into Ukraine as far as air support and the training of the infantry support to go with these tanks? I don't know how that's going to look, but I know America is still holding back, not sending F-16 jets, the same jets that Ukraine has been fighting for a long time. Initially in the war, it was because we could not train a pilot in this jet to be in it by the end of the war. Well, now we're 12 months in, or almost 12 months into this war. At least you would have had a head start of 12 months of training. Now, I've heard that there are Ukrainian pilots training on the F-16s, but I'm unsure where. But the CEO of Lockheed Martin, the largest defence company in the world, has said that Lockheed can pick up their production to replace any F-16s from countries that operate them. If they send them to Ukraine, that they can absolutely produce more for that country, or for Ukraine, however it looks. So that was an article that Lockheed put out. So it is interesting to see how this is going to be. Will this be a silver bullet in the war? No, it's going to take a bloody long time. And what damage can Russia do in that time? This is almost the window now that if they're going to escalate, they have to escalate before these things happen. We saw last night a massive missile attack as well as drone attack onto Ukraine. Ukraine was incredibly successful, primarily with drones. I've heard from 80% to 100% of those drones were shot down by Ukrainian anti-air. And some of the missiles did slip through onto targets as far as electrical facilities and anything else that they were bloody aimed at. But the majority absolutely were spotted and shot down. So I guess that's my little bit of a spiel on this and how I see this. I think some of this is actually being left out. The headline of Ukraine to receive Abrams. Great. Is it that simple? Absolutely not. We knew it wouldn't be. A lot of training, very complex machine. A lot of time they have to make new ones and put them in, take the top secret armor out. It's difficult. But either way, you got to remember that, and I don't want to harp on about this too much, but at the end of the day, war is politics. And, at the end of the day, people will do things for brownie points, political things. And this is my bit of a concern, and this is putting my bloody tinfoil hat on here, so strap in, is if they really wanted Ukraine to conquer and win this in the next weeks, months, whatever, there's 5,000 Abrams tanks. The majority of those, well, none of them are deployed. Why is it 31? Why is it not with this armor? I get classifications. I get all the... I understand how that works. But Germany, 14 Leopards, 100 Leopards. 100 Leopards sounds good, but there's thousands within Europe. We have Leopard 1s sitting bloody at the front of bases in Australia. We have Leopard 1s just sitting there that are literally just something to look at as you come in the base. So it's hard. And there absolutely is an element of extending this to bleed Russia's supplies out. And there's a lot smarter people than me who look at this war and are, pushing this here and there. Maybe this is the best tactic to, have success in the end, but I don't know. But look, that'll do from me today. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I'm feeling a little bit better. Thank you for your concerns. It was nothing serious. Look after yourself, and thank you for all the constructive criticism and positive stuff on the interview I just did. I had a few people in Ukraine and a few fighters reach out and be like, yeah, mate, this guy really knows what it's on about. And people raised some concerns as well with things said. But at the end of the day, I interview people, they can say what they want, and it's up to you guys to call out the BS or agree with what you do, here nor there. They're not here to be friends. So, look, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and look after yourselves. Bye-bye.